Growing up in my family felt like living in a shadow. As I walked down the narrow hallway of our home in Fortinwood, the walls seemed to echo with reminders of how overshadowed I was. Framed photographs of my sibling adorned the walls, snapshots of grinning faces accepting awards, flashing the latest gadgets surrounded by friends. I paused at one particular photo, a moment captured in time. My sibling glowing with the golden light of the afternoon sun, wrapped in what I later learned was a prize-winning trophy. Next to that picture hung a solemn portrait of me, a quick snap taken on a seemingly unimportant day, little more than a reminder of my presence. To say I often felt invisible would be an understatement. I had perfect attendance in the background, always sitting by, clapping for my sibling while my heart twisted in envy and longing. "Look at what your sibling achieved this year," would say my parents at the dinner table, where my siblings' accomplishments were not just acknowledged but celebrated continuously. I could see the light in their eyes as they spoke, a warmth that always seemed absent when they turned to me for a moment of acknowledgement. "Amelia, what about you? Did you join any clubs this year?" They would ask casually, their gaze already dismissively drifting back to my sibling, who had just received another piano accolade. I always felt compelled to answer, to contribute. "I helped with the fundraiser at school," I would say, trying to inject a hint of pride into my voice, though my heart sank as I recalled the long hours spent organizing all the details. No trophy, no recognition, just the tired acknowledgement that such an event had occurred. On a crisp autumn evening, I was rummaging through my closet, wishing it were filled with the kinds of clothes that didn't wear like old rags. The faded shirts were a reflection of my hard work from various odd jobs I picked up, babysitting for neighbors, washing cars, sometimes even helping at the local grocery store. Every paycheck I squirreled away felt like a precious gem, a small victory against the indifference that surrounded me. I could hear my sibling in the other room, the sound of happiness radiating. "Can you believe this, the latest gaming console?" Their excited voice echoed through the air, slicing through my thoughts like a knife. I could picture the box, bright and glossy, adorned with colors that shone brighter than my future seemed to me. "Amelia," my sibling called out, the energy in their voice infectious. "You should come see this, you will not believe how awesome this is." A mixture of bitterness and curiosity churned in my stomach. Did they even realize how hollow it felt to see them surrounded by new things while I scrimped and saved? Did they care how hard I worked just to have something, even if it was nothing in comparison? I leaned against the doorframe, listening for a moment longer before slipping quietly back to my room, the sound of laughter fading behind me. That was when whispers of trouble began to circulate through our family gatherings. I caught snippets of conversations, the kind that would tease my ears when I entered a room, voices dipping lower as I approached. It was almost as if I were wearing a cloak of invisibility, and those discussions respectably stopped for my presence. I was a bystander in my own life. "I heard the bank is tightening their belt," a relative would say, and I held my breath, trying to gather every single word. "They may have to sell the house if things don't change." I felt a strange flutter in my chest, a mixed bag of emotions. My home was where I felt most lost, yet it was still the only place that I could return to. The thought of losing it made my mind ricochet with thoughts. What would happen if the whispers turned loud? What would happen to me? During one family dinner, amidst the clanking of forks and the laughter that seemed to wash over me, I decided to ask the question that lingered in my mind. Is everything okay with our finances? I could almost taste the tension in the air as the words slipped from my lips. My parents exchanged a quick glance, a dance of confusion and perhaps concern. My sibling looked up from their plate, lips poised to say something, but then it froze in their throat as our father broke the stillness. "Why would you ask that?" he replied, masking it with a chuckle that lacked warmth. "We are just fine, sweetheart, just busy, you know how it is." The dismissiveness stung. I had a slightly biting reply ready, but instead I pushed my food around on my plate. I had wanted to defend my concerns, but the weight of being the scapegoat pressed down on me. "Mom, how about we get everyone some ice cream?" suggested my sibling, eager to shift the narrative. "I earned a ton of money with my new allowance." The laughter bubbled back up, swirling around the table, drowning me in its confidence. "Sure, why not?" chirped our mother, wholly absorbed once again in my sibling's golden aura. I watched as the joy ignited around them, the ice cream and laughter like fuel for their fire, incinerating what little light I had been trying to hold on to. And as they moved to the kitchen, I pulled away, my heart beating heavier each passing second, questioning if anyone would notice if I simply faded away. But that very night, solitude embraced me as I turned in early. I couldn't shake the feeling that something essential lay beneath the surface of our family's image, something dark and looming. While my sibling was cradled in their world of acceptance, accolades, and rewards, where was my room for growth, for affirmation? I flipped through the pages of an old notebook, attempting to distract myself by writing down feelings that felt murky and unarticulated. I wanted to scream, to tell them all that I was here, but would anybody even care? My emotional tempest raged and then circled back as I remembered the words of my relative echoing in the background. We may have to sell. I took a deep breath, trying to concentrate on something other than the dimming light of my own existence. In some twisted way, I found myself determined to discover what lay beneath the glossy finish of our family's reputation. I wanted to uncover the truth of our finances. The thought of unearthing the skeletons rotting within our closets felt almost like redemption, a chance to take back some control over the narrative of my life, to justify my existence beyond the shadows I had been living in. Maybe I can find something, I whispered to myself, a new fire igniting within me. Something that can show that I matter as much as that golden child. As sleep began to creep in, my dreams went dark, the concept of revenge casting its long shadow over the convoluted family I once wished to love unconditionally. The very next day, I found myself sneaking into my parents' study while they were out. The study was filled with dark wooden furniture and shelves stacked with books that smelled of dust, along with a large oak desk littered with papers. I began rifling through them, every sound amplified, quickening my heartbeat. What if they return? I muttered under my breath, glancing at the clock above the doorway, the second hand moving agonizingly slow. As I flipped through old bills, tax documents, and receipts, the reality hit me like a brick. They were buried in debt, bills stacked high like the trophy my sibling had received only weeks before, pristine and polished, while my own existence was stacked like so much refuse at the bottom of a pile. Breathe, I told myself, clutching a paper that bore a chilling figure I wasn't ready to comprehend. The debts weren't just mortgages and loans, they were unpaid credit accounts, medical expenses, all piling up like a storm waiting to break. My mind raced, tangled thoughts crashing into one another as panic set in. I just wanted to know the truth. But this, I could hardly finish my thought, the weight of revelation loomed. The door creaked behind me, forcing me to jump back. It was my sibling, standing there with a puzzled expression, mouth agape. What are you doing? Asked, surprise etched across their face. I stood frozen, torn between confession and the desire to protect myself with silence. Just looking for a book, I managed to stammer out, but even I could hear the weakness in my voice. They did not look convinced. A book? You didn't think to go to the library for that? Their words dripped with the same superiority that always pricked at me. Oh, lighten up, I wanted something specific. I shot back defensively, fully aware that I had said too much. Is that the new game you just got? I motioned towards their hand, trying to divert the tension. They smirked, perhaps feeling triumphant as the discussion shifted focus back to their worldly desires. Yeah, it's amazing, you should try it sometime. There it was, the condescension again, and my heart hardened even more as the revelation of our family's financial status loomed, threatening to reveal their gilded bubble. At that moment, the truth I uncovered seemed both agonizing and powerful. My sibling may bask in acclaim, but I now wielded knowledge that could rewrite our story, a chance to regain control over the narrative. I convinced myself that the tides were turning, but deep inside, I knew that the path ahead was lined with more than debts. It was a precarious journey toward unveiling the facade that threatened to crush me under the weight of its consequences. The balance is shifting, and I am ready, I whispered to myself, uncertainty turning into determination as shadows danced around me in our family home like phantoms waiting to be released one evening. I was cleaning out the attic when I found a pile of old bills and letters hidden away in a dusty box. The air was thick with dust motes swirling under the faded light of a single bulb, casting long shadows across the cramped space cluttered with forgotten memories. As I sifted through the damp, yellowing paper, my heart sank. It felt as though I had unearthed bones in an unmarked grave, treasured secrets now turned to ashes of betrayal. They weren't just forgotten items, they were overdue notices and loan statements stacked haphazardly, like a tower of lies collapsing in on itself. Each letter was a heavy weight pressing down on my chest, resonating with an anger I had not yet dared to explore. I could feel the pulse of betrayal in my veins as I read the numbers, staggering $50,000 worth of debt that my father and sibling had kept from me. I felt a wave of betrayal wash over me, cresting like an ocean wave that was determined to crash down, soaking me in confusion and resentment. How could they prioritize their own comforts while leaving me in financial turmoil? How could they live lavishly while I was barely getting by? I caught a glimpse of myself in the dusty attic mirror, my wild, tangled hair framing a face defined by disbelief and fury. The flickering light above me seemed to mirror the tumult of emotions swirling within. Why didn't I see this sooner? I asked aloud, my voice echoing off the wood-paneled walls. No answer came, just the hollow sound of my own disbelief. I stood there stunned, every vacation postcard and plastic wrap trinket I'd come across this evening, once innocuous in my eyes, now felt like fragments of a twisted fairy tale where I played the part of the gullible protagonist. My father was about to lose the family home. What was he thinking? I spat the words as if they were venom. The thought of all those precious childhood memories slipping through our fingers felt like a physical blow. I could picture him, sitting in his armchair, oblivious as the walls creaked with the weight of impending loss, maybe sipping a drink in front of the television while the world crumbled around him. A hollow laugh escaped my lips, bitter and cold. And my sibling, the one who always seemed to be living in a dream, cycling through a life of shiny new cars and spontaneous road trips. I clenched my fists, feeling the sting of betrayal like an old friend. Their extravagant lifestyle had bankrupted us. "Who do you think you are?" I yelled into the empty attic, the sharpness of my voice cutting through the dust-laden air, a storm brewing just beneath the surface of my composed demeanor. The recent lavish vacations, the new car, the endless shopping sprees all at my expense. I felt nauseous, veins buzzing with the adrenaline of betrayal as clarity poured over me like cold water, awakening my senses. Suddenly, everything made sense, the spirals of doubt coalescing into a clear, sharp image of deception. The family portrait hanging crooked on the attic wall caught my eye, the image of happier times taunting me with its false sense of security. We looked perfect in that photo, our smiles bright against the backdrop of our home. Yet here I was, alone in the quiet attic, discovering the cracks in our family's facade. How could they do this to me? The questions spun in my head like a record on repeat, a haunting melody I could not escape. I was left feeling the impact of their lies like a physical weight dragging me down. Images of recent interactions flooded my mind. The way my sibling had laughed about their new designer jacket. "You should treat yourself, it's important to live your life," they had said, a carefree hopefulness in their voice that now sounded eerily hollow. My father, too, had been wrapped up in his own world, oblivious as usual and maybe just a touch selfish. Every time he mentioned financial obstacles, he would dismiss it all with a wave of his hand, like it was wine spilled on a tablecloth instead of a looming reality. "Look at us, everything is fine, right?" he would say, laughter bubbling to the surface, and I would nod along because what else could I do? I had been the dutiful child, the one who kept the peace, who believed the best of them because it was the only way to endure the chaos of uncertainty that surrounded our family. But my duty was wearing thin now, fraying at the edges like an old sweater. In that attic, surrounded by the remnants of their choices, I felt something shift within me. My anger morphed into resolve. It burned bright, igniting a path through my grief. I had shared my life with these people, shared dinners, secrets, and hugs that felt secure, and now it felt like a betrayal of trust that shredded any warmth I might have held for them. My family was crumbling under the weight of their decisions, a structure built of lies teetering dangerously on the edge. I felt powerless in that moment, but not for long. That simmering anger built within me, a desire for justice. I would not let this stand. "What do I do now?" I asked the empty attic, the darkness now enveloping me as sunset painted the edges of the window with orangey-red hues. I gathered up the pile of bills and letters, seeing their collective weight in my arms, feeling the crisp edges bite into my skin. These pieces of paper were not just bills, they were weapons of truth, and I held them tightly. "I have to confront them," I whispered through gritted teeth, the sound echoing back to me, filled with determination. As the last rays of sunlight withdrew, shadows began to creep deeper, and I felt the atmosphere change. It wrapped around me like a cold blanket, but I welcomed it. I steeled myself for the confrontation. I could not allow myself to feel fear or hesitation. I needed to bring this to light, to expose them, to peel back the layers of deception they had wrapped around me. I had no room for nostalgia, no space for kindness. The flickering bulb above reminded me that every moment I had given them was now precious time wasted, a gift unreciprocated. I stuffed the letters back into the dusty box, my fingers trembling with each crinkled piece of paper I shoved away. I made my way downstairs, each step heavier than the last, a weighty promise lodged in my throat. I could hear their voices wafting from the living room, laughter punctuating the air, light and carefree as if nothing hung in the balance. I hesitated at the bottom of the staircase, glancing briefly at the family photos that lined the walls, snapshots of happier times, memories I had cherished now tinged with betrayal. I swallowed hard. Clenching my fists tightly at my sides, I stepped forward, the sound of my heart pounding louder than the muffled laughter spilling from the other room. I would no longer be the child who allowed her heart to be trampled. I was done. "Hey, can we talk?" I called out, stepping through the doorway with a confidence I didn't really feel. But the anger coursed through me, giving me the words I needed. Their laughter stilled as they turned to look at me, surprise flickering in their eyes, and I knew the atmosphere had shifted. "What's up, Amelia?" my sibling asked, the casual tone they used when they planned the next whim flashing like a warning light in my mind. "We need to talk about the debts, the money. What is going on?" I confronted them directly, the words unfurling like a banner of defiance in the air between us. "What debts?" my father replied, furrowing his brow, the confusion in his voice a sickening mix of innocence and ignorance. "Don't play dumb," I found the bills in the attic, $50,000. You've let everything fall apart while pretending everything was fine. My voice rose with each word, every syllable weighted with the pain I had felt trapped beneath. The silence that followed felt toxic, thick and cloying as they exchanged glances, the truth hanging like a guillotine blade poised above them. It's not like that, my siblings stammered, their feigned nonchalance cracking under the pressure of my certainty. We're managing, I cut them off sharply. You're crashing into a financial storm and you call that managing? This is about to affect our home. How could you think I wouldn't find out? The determination that brewed within me roared like a wildfire, overwhelming me and silencing their feeble attempts at denial. I lived my whole life trusting you guys, believing our family was strong, and this is what you do? This is what you hide from me. The weight of the letters I had carried with me to confront them suddenly felt heavier, and I brandished the bills like swords. How do you justify this betrayal? I want to know how you thought this was okay. The truths, once hidden beneath the surface, now rose to engulf us all. Tension crackled in the air, the faintest tremor of impending change vibrating through our makeshift family unit as I stared into their eyes, demanding the answers that felt so needed. But we didn't want to worry you, my father finally mumbled, his expression shifting from confusion to defensiveness, and I felt rage blossom anew. Worry me? You thought lying to me would be easier. I shouted, feeling the tears pool within my eyes as betrayal dragged me deeper into despair. How could you burden me with this when you've already made such selfish decisions? You wanted to protect me? From what? The fact that you made me carry the weight of your mistakes. The room fell silent. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth, the truth like acid spilling over my heart's wounds. I wanted answers, and I demanded to know how they could live so carelessly, whilst I wrestled with my own responsibilities. We just wanted the best for the family, my sibling finally whispered, the shadows in their eyes reflecting the weight of what they could not say. I shook my head slowly, disappointment tightening my throat. The best for you means sacrificing the rest of us. I would have preferred knowing the truth than living in this lie. Please, Amelia, my father said, his voice low and heavy, stripped of bravado. We can work this out together. But that was the crux of it. I felt the resolve twist into something unyielding. They had decided my future without consulting me, and now it was time for me to reclaim the narrative I had lost. I'm not sure I want to work this out at all, I murmured, the truth rolling off my tongue like gravel, sharp and uncomfortable. You've shown me what the real cost of your choices is, and I'm not sure if I can be part of this. As those words settled around us, my heart felt both heavy and free, the seething anger turning to a cold but resolute chill. I could feel the flames of betrayal flickering dimly inside, but for the first time I was ready to gather my strength. I was no longer the child waiting for love in a house of false promises. No, I would rise from this ashes as I strode out of that room, feeling resolute in my decision to dismantle the pieces of this crumbling family to forge the truth anew. I stood in the middle of the dimly lit living room, just a few inches away from him, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The familiar scent of old wood and stale air filled the space, reminding me of countless family gatherings that had once been full of laughter. Now that laughter felt like a ghost, haunting me as I prepared for the inevitable confrontation. This was it, the moment when I would finally demand the truth behind the secrets that had torn our family apart. Why won't you just tell me the truth? I finally exclaimed, my voice quaking with urgency. All these years you've hidden behind your excuses, and I am done with it. I stepped closer, my palms clammy, fists clenched at my sides, the urgency driving me forward. What do you think I care so much about the family's future when it seems like you do? Your lies have ruined everything. He folded his arms defensively, a frown deepening his brow, showing the same stubbornness I had seen too many times before. Amelia, it is not as simple as you think. You have to understand that your siblings are too young to grasp the consequences of their actions, he responded, his tone dripping with condescension. It was always about them, always about shielding them from the hard truths, while I was left standing in the shadow of their innocence, wanting to scream. Too young, I shot back incredulously. That is your excuse. They are just kids, so they get a free pass while you brush their mistakes under the rug. What about me? What about the hell I have gone through, constantly cleaning up after their messes? Do you even hear yourself? It is like you care more for their fragile egos than for the pain you have caused me. The frustration built within me, sharp and biting like a winter's chill, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. His expression shifted slightly, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. You are being dramatic, Amelia. They made mistakes. All children do. You have to find a way to forgive them, just as I am trying to help them grow. You are their older sister. Be a role model for them, not their judge. Forgive, I echoed, the bitterness crawling up my throat. What do you mean by forgive? You think pretending the problems don't exist or blaming me while you let them slide for everything will make them better? That is not how life works. I could feel the heat radiating between us, heavier than the stillness in the air, and it made me sick to my stomach. You don't understand, he continued, his tone now teetering on irritation. If you expose everything, it will ruin them. You don't want that for your family, do you? Ruining them or saving them? I interjected, my voice rising like a tempest. You tell yourself that you're protecting them, but all you're doing is keeping them in a bubble. Is that really fair? They need to learn, and by allowing them to escape consequences, you're not helping them. I am, by being honest. The churn in my stomach swirled more violently, my heart feeling like it was in a vice. Amelia, you're being cruel, he said almost dismissively with a shake of his head. You are too consumed by your anger to see reason. I thought you were better than this. Family should stand by each other, not tear each other apart over secrets. Better than this? You're seriously blaming me for wanting answers, for wanting to understand why the pieces of our family have been scattered like broken glass. My voice shook with fury and hurt, and it felt as if I had to fight for every word. What kind of father keeps secrets, especially when those secrets are what destroyed us? You are protecting your perfect little image of them, but what about me? What about the daughter who has carried all the weight of your decisions? The frustration poured out of me like a raging river, threatening to wash away everything in its path. His eyes narrowed, and I saw the frustration boil to the surface. Fine. If you want to know, then look past your own hurt and realize that this is not all about you. His voice edged deeper into anger now, filled with disappointment. We are muddled in the fallout of poor choices, choices that we didn't have control over. We all bear a part of the blame. I am trying to guide us through this, not destroy us with the truth. But that truth could set me free, and I knew it. Yet somehow that terrified me too. I could feel my pulse quicken, my hands trembling as I shifted my weight from one foot to another, my mind grappling with the implications of all of this. No one is going to save us if we keep ignoring what has happened, I said softly, lowering my voice slightly, but the intensity hung heavy in the air like a steel cord. Sometimes protecting people means telling them less, he said coolly, as if attempting to regain control of the conversation while I felt the wheels in my mind turning, plotting my next move. You need to learn to let things go. Let things go. Wasn't that the mantra of a coward? I clenched my jaw, fighting against the stinging emotions, trying to shove the hurt back down. Letting things go doesn't fix the damage, Dad. How can you sit here and act like turning a blind eye to all the lies and favoritism is a solution? I wanted so desperately to break through his resolve, shatter the walls he had built around himself and this twisted version of family he had created. He almost seemed to recoiling into himself as if this encounter had cracked open something raw within him. You think you are the only one suffering? You think your pain is unique? Everyone bears their own battles, Amelia. Your siblings may need their innocence protected, but you should know better, you should be smarter. You think that by hiding the truth you are being a good father, but you are simply perpetuating a lie that has cost me dearly. Do you know what it is like to feel unloved and unseen? To watch as what should have been my family turn into a circus of dysfunction? I felt like I was wading into the depths of my despair, words spilling out like water over a crumbling dam. But his gaze turned cold again, and what stood between us felt insurmountable. You are making it more complex than it needs to be, Amelia. You need to consider the repercussions of your actions instead of dwelling in anger, he spat, the words as sharp as shrapnel. Repercussions? You mean the consequences of your secrets? My anger is justified. I am sick of being the victim in this twisted game of favoritism and deception. My words seemed to hang in the space between us, echoing in my heart. You only see black and white, he said, his frustration palpable. You need to learn that there are shades of gray. Your siblings need you, but you are too caught up in your rage to acknowledge that. Now you are just setting a bad example. A wise older sister would not turn on those who need her most. I won't let them carry on like this, pretending everything is perfect while we are falling apart, I replied, a determined edge creeping into my voice. I refuse to turn my back on the truth. It is time to dismantle the lies that have ensnared our family. The silence that filled the room afterward felt like a heavy prison pressing down on us both. I could see the fight slowly leaking from him, the weight of understanding starting to settle on his shoulders. But understanding wasn't enough. I needed answers, and I would get them even if it meant turning my family inside out. I will expose the truth, what you have done, what you have allowed to happen. You cannot keep holding this family hostage with your secrets. I whispered, my own resolve stealing even more. With a parting stare, that fierce determination flickered within me. I could not shake the feeling of emptiness, but I knew that inaction would lead to my continued suffering. The flames of vengeance ignited, rushing through me with ferocity. A plan began to weave itself in my thoughts, a swirling mist of dark possibilities fluttering through my mind. I would hold the truth in my hands like a weapon, an undeniable shining truth, and my father and my siblings would have to confront it. That night sleep eluded me. The shadows of secrets danced behind my closed eyelids, and my heart thudded erratically as I sat in bed, a blank canvas of thoughts and emotions swirling within me like a tempest. I lay there, the weight of my decision pressing heavily on my chest, a single amber glow from the clock illuminating the darkness. It would take careful planning, strategy really, and I needed to think about the specifics, how to expose them, how to ensure they face the truth. Revenge does not come without careful preparation after all. I would be the architect of their awakening. I needed to gather evidence, support, anything that could lay their lives bare, exposing them for the charade they had chosen to conduct. I would shatter the illusion and rebuild the family on a solid foundation of truth, what I believed to be justice. I could feel determination coursing through my veins, filling me with energy as I finally set my jaw and clenched my fists. The shadows drifted away, replaced by clarity, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I sensed that my pain could serve a purpose. I had orchestrated a plan that was as intricate as a spider's web, each thread carefully placed to ensnare my father and sibling in their deceit. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the living room, where I sat on the couch, computer resting on my lap, heart thrumming like a drum. I opened a file labeled Evidence, and the dusty old document spilled forth like a Pandora's box of secrets. Each bill, each bank statement told stories of lies spun around our family's supposed wealth. My fingers trembled with excitement as I began to piece everything together. The more I collected, the more the thrill surged through me. They thought I was the good child, the obedient one who turned a blind eye to their shenanigans. Little did they know, the web would soon ensnare them. The scent of old paper and the faint musk of our home filled the air, grounding me in the reality of what I was about to unleash. My father, the so-called patriarch, had built his entire identity around the facade of riches. But I could see through the thin veneer. I was the one who noticed when he hid his credit card statements, tucking them into the back of drawers like stray thoughts he wanted to forget. Now I had stacks of proof, secrets that would unravel the perfect image he painted. A low chuckle escaped me as I imagined the moment when those bright, polished images would shatter. I shot a glance toward the staircase, half expecting my sibling to appear, blissfully unaware of the storm swirling around us. But they were consumed by their own worries, tethered to friendships that hung by a delicate thread. I had seen the way they flaunted our family's status at school, brandishing it like a shield against the insecurities that lay beneath. "Amelia, you okay?" A voice piped up, jolting me out of my thoughts. I turned to see my sibling at the top of the stairs, concern etched across their face. "I'm fine, just planning a project for work," I replied, crafting a casual tone. "How is school?" Their eyes flitted away, a telltale sign of discomfort. School was their battleground, and I knew the whispers were growing louder. "It's fine, just a lot of pressure," they muttered, truth laced with embarrassment. "Pressure can be a good thing. It builds character," I said, letting a hint of sarcasm slip into my voice. "Or so they say." Their brow furrowed, and I nearly relished the sight. "Yeah, right, sometimes it's just too much," they sighed, the weight of unspoken truths heavy in their tone. I could imagine the whispers swirling around them. Did they realize the hypocrisy of it all? Picking on others, pretending to be untouchable while lying about the very foundation they stood on. Maybe they were starting to sense the chinks in their armor. As the days passed, my plan developed into something organic. I had reached out anonymously to a few family members. The first message I sent was simple: "Did you hear about the family debts? It seems like not everything is as it appears." The reply was swift, curiosity mingling with disbelief marking every word. "What do you mean?" The seeds of doubt had been planted, and I could practically taste the chaos. Whispers began to echo in the halls of family gatherings. Conversations that once revolved around the weather or new recipes now drifted towards my father's finances. "Did you hear?" one aunt would say, leaning in conspiratorially. "I heard they have debt issues." The excitement was palpable. They had sniffed out scandal like bloodhounds. I reveled in it, walking into family dinners with a mask of composure while the room buzzed with a newfound tension created by my hidden machinations. Little did my father know the storm brewing behind his back. I could almost see the slow unraveling of his well-tailored image before my eyes. The glances from relatives were telling. They had shifted from admiration to suspicion. I would take every whispered concern like an elixir, drinking it in and savoring the heady rush of realization that my plan was working perfectly. Every now and then I would catch my father at work, surrounded by his colleagues, and the tension in the atmosphere was palpable. The laughter that echoed no longer seemed genuine. I saw him contemplating every joke, every remark. Each day I brought him closer to the edge felt like a small victory. Then came the moment I had anticipated, when my siblings' world collided with the consequences of our family's secrets. I sat at the kitchen table one afternoon, the scent of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air, masking the bitterness rising within me. My siblings stormed into the room, face flushed, eyes wide. "Everyone at school is talking about us, Amelia. They think we are broke, can you believe that?" A twisted sense of joy bubbled inside me at the reminder that my carefully laid plan was now bearing fruit. "That sounds rough," I replied, letting feigned concern spill from my lips like syrup. "What are they saying?" "They say our family is in debt. They say our parents lied about everything." Their voice was trembling, frustration coursing through every word. "All the things we have, the clothes, the car, it's all a lie." I don't understand. It took everything within me to suppress the smile creeping onto my lips. "Sounds like just kids being kids, doesn't it?" I replied coolly, internal calm barely masking the thrill of vindication. You know how rumors spread. But it's not fair, my sibling's voice faltered, caught in an intertwining web of disbelief and betrayal. They've even unfollowed me on social media. I can't walk down the hall without someone making fun of me. I leaned back in my chair, letting my siblings' outrage wash over me like a warm, satisfying wave. That really must sting. But honestly, can you blame them? They feel like they've been misled. They trusted us to be like them, to own what we share, I said softly, the poison dripping through my tone. Do you think maybe it's worth talking to Dad about? Talk to Dad? You really think he will be able to fix this? Their voice was laced with skepticism. He's the one causing it in the first place. My throat tightened at the way these words hung in the air, laden with truth. Still, I plunged deeper. Well, what would you do? Should we just let this blow over and wait for the rumors to fade, or should we confront it, be honest? Honestly, I am so sick of this. Every day feels like a lie. How could he let this happen? My sibling's face contorted in distress, revealing raw edges of their vulnerability. Let's just say he's not as perfect as everyone thinks he is, I murmur, allowing a bit of bitterness to seep into my words. The tension was palpable. I had turned the dagger and I could feel it sinking deeper. Their expression was a mixture of hurt and frustration. You know, all I wanted was to impress my friends. Now they are all gone, and every time I walk in, I can feel the stares and hear the whispers. There's always a way to turn things around, I offered, even as a part of me couldn't help but relish the desolation in their eyes. Maybe you could tell the truth about where we are, maybe even throw a little honesty in their faces. They might surprise you. My mind was racing with fantasies of retribution. I could see my father's scowl as he faced the results of his actions, confrontations ignited in family gatherings as relatives turned their backs. It was poetic in a twisted sense. My siblings shook their head in disbelief, their frustration peaking. This is so unfair. How can Dad even show his face at the next family gathering? It's embarrassing. Maybe it's time that people know the truth, I said, relishing the moment. In a way, it's almost refreshing. The weight of lies can be exhausting. Wouldn't it feel good to stand taller knowing who you really are? Their eyes widened in shock, maybe also confusion, a glimmer of curiosity flickering beneath the surface. You mean just exposing everything? Why not? If people are already whispering, let them come face to face with the truth, I encouraged gently, savoring the unfolding chaos. You'd be surprised how liberating it can feel to let go of the need to impress others. At that moment, an unexpected knock at the door pulled us both from our heated exchange. My heart raced as I glanced toward the entrance. Who could that be? I muttered, curiosity lacing my words. With apprehension hanging in the air like a storm cloud, I made my way to the door, my sibling trailing behind with uncertainty etched across their face. As I opened the door, it revealed my cousin, eyes alight with an intoxicating cocktail of excitement and dread. You need to see this, they said, entirely breathless. Something big is happening? I turned back to my sibling, sensing the tension in the air shift. The unfolding chaos had taken a new turn. I could feel my pulse quickening, my heart thrumming in anticipation. What is it? I demanded, intense intrigue brimming within me. They're talking, my cousin said, enthusiasm mingled with fear. Your dad's hidden debts are the talk of the town. Everyone knows they're talking about confronting him. We all know he can't keep pretending. The truth is coming out and it's going to shake everything. As the reality of their words settled around us like a thick fog, I could not suppress the glee blooming in my chest. The moment I had been waiting for was on the brink, and it felt exhilarating. As whispers bled into shouts and shockwaves rippled through our lives, I realized I was merely halfway through my revenge. Just when I thought I had led them down the darkest of paths, I was ready to take the rest of the family with me. The fragile world my father had created was on the verge of collapse, and with each passing day, I became more convinced that the end of their unrealistic facade was more than just possible. It was inevitable. The fallout was indeed swift. It hit me like a punch to the gut, that moment when I realized I had become the fulcrum on which our family's fortunes balanced, teetering dangerously to one side. The day after I unveiled the truth about my siblings' misdeeds and my father's negligence, I watched the cascading effects ripple through the branches of our family tree. Social standing for my sibling plummeted like a stone dropped from a height, and whispers filled the air like a creeping fog, heavy with judgment. I could hear it even when I wasn't in the room. Family friends casting sidelong glances and murmuring words thick with disdain about their loyalty to our family, as if the reveal of hidden debts might somehow tarnish them too. So there we were, gathered again at the family estate, a grand old house that had seen better days, but was still filled with polished antiques and memories stained with false pretenses. The air was thick with tension, as my family crowded into the ornately decorated dining room. Sunlight struggled through the heavy curtains, casting uncertain shadows across the table, heavy with exquisite china that seemed to reflect how uncomfortably pretentious the gathering truly was. The last time we had all been together, the laughter had been feigned, and now it felt like an effigy of a family coming apart at the seams. My sibling stood across from me, anger boiling just below the surface, face contorted like a mask of fury. They pointed a finger at me, a gesture meant to both intimidate and accuse, but I felt nothing but empowerment surging through me like electricity that surged through my veins. You think you can just ruin my life, Amelia? They spat, voice straining, trembling with a mix of fury and fear. You've humiliated us all. I couldn't help but scoff at their dramatic tone. Ruin your life. You did that all on your own. I shot back, my heart racing not from fear but from the adrenaline of finally standing tall. Your choices brought this upon you. I merely exposed the truth. My father, red-faced and fuming, couldn't keep silent any longer. He pushed back from the table, the sound of his chair scraping against the polished floor sharp and cutting through the fraying tension. Amelia, you're tearing this family apart, he bellowed, each word laced with desperation. You don't understand the consequences of your actions? Consequences. I leaned in closer, my palms pressing against the table, the cool surface grounding me. Don't I? Let's talk about consequences, Dad. Let's talk about the sacrifices I made for this family while you indulged in your lavish lifestyle without a thought for anyone else's struggle. You sat in your office while I worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Around us, family members shifted uncomfortably, the atmosphere hanging heavy, almost electric. Despite their discomfort, I could see encouragement in the glances from the corners of the room. A cousin, someone I hadn't seen in ages, shifted forward in her seat, whispering under her breath, "Amelia's right, you know." And just like that, a spark flickered to life. The tension began to fracture under the weight of collective unease. I continued, fueled by the power of shared experience. I watched you and my sibling throw cash around like confetti, never worrying about who might get hurt. And now you think you can sweep this under the rug and pretend it never happened? I felt emboldened, words pouring out of me as I painted vivid images, memories that were impossible to erase. You didn't want to see the truth, but you had the power to change it. My sibling rolled their eyes in an exaggerated gesture, but I could see cracks in their bravado. You don't get to lecture us, Amelia, they spat, bitterness lacing their words, yet I felt the truth behind their anger. Deep down, they were terrified. You're just bitter because you didn't get everything you wanted. Bitterness clawed at my throat, but I swallowed hard, determined not to let their words pierce my confidence. No, I said evenly, my voice low yet resolute. You're wrong. I am not bitter, I am finally awake. While you wallowed in your comfort, I was up at dawn strategizing payments and bills, planning just to stay afloat. The faces of my relatives reflected a spectrum of emotions: shock, disbelief, shame. Aunt Mildred, usually the peacemaker, fidgeted with the rings on her fingers, looking trapped between the contesting factions. Amelia, I think we all should calm down, she offered hesitantly, her voice quavering slightly, but I could tell she was struggling to find her footing in this new reality. No, Aunt Mildred, I interrupted, desperation creeping into my voice but turning it into fuel. It's time to be honest. I felt invigorated by what I could only describe as a moment of clarity. For all the years I twalled, I was met with disdain or the back of a hand when I spoke up about issues that needed addressing. You all wanted to keep up appearances at the expense of those around you, but not anymore. I could finally see the dominoes starting to fall. Great-uncle Roderick cleared his throat, his expression a cocktail of disbelief and intrigue. Amelia, you have sacrificed much, and perhaps we have taken you for granted, he said, his voice trembling but sincere. Times are changing, and it is time to acknowledge our shortcomings. My sibling's face twisted with disgust and anger. Really? You would side with her? They shot a skeptical glance at Uncle Roderick. You're all falling for her manipulation. Manipulation. I echoed, incredulity flooding my voice. This isn't manipulation, this is the truth. This is what you've done to yourselves. I stood straighter, feeling as if I were shedding the last remnants of fear that had once held me back. For the first time, I could feel the momentum shift, hear the muttering vibrate with sympathy directed at me. My father's bravado crumbled, his shoulders slumping as if I had pulled the air from the room, leaving nothing but a cold, raw truth lingering. You don't have to do this, he said quietly at first, but I could sense his anger raging just beneath the surface. You don't need to make this a public spectacle. It's only a spectacle because you have always pretended everything was fine while I was left to struggle, I responded, the heat of righteous anger warming me. Why should I shrink back? Why should I hide the painful truths we've all lived? If anything, this moment is long overdue. A distant, uncomfortable silence enveloped us, but I felt hopeful beneath it all. The voices of cousins and aunts began to mingle, a soft but collective murmur that resonated through the room, one that spoke of understanding and a need for change. The fragile tapestry of our family, once tightly woven with threads of deception, was fraying, and it felt good, so unbelievably good. And then, as if their slow acceptance fueled my bravery even more, I reached deep into my soul and exposed the last of my truths. It wasn't just about finances, but what those debts stood for. It encompassed all the nights I spent wondering if I was ever enough compared to you both, always trying to prove that I could find my way even without a silver spoon. I found that my worth was not tied to material wealth or false appearances, but to who I was as a person struggling to be seen. Enough. My siblings' rage was palpable, but the fire in my heart couldn't be extinguished. It's too late to turn the tables and take the victim role now, they screamed, cheeks flushed, their world tilting beneath them as they fought to gain control. I met their gaze, steady and unwavering. I'm not a victim anymore. I refuse to bear that title and instead embrace my strength. I will no longer be someone who settles for scraps at the table. I deserve a seat right beside you. And as I stood there, resolute, their faces contorted with anger, embarrassment, and something akin to realization, I felt a profound sense of comfort wash over me. I was reclaiming my right to be seen and my right to be respected. You can fight all you want. You can deny your part in this for as long as you want. But it does not change the facts, and it certainly does not change how I now see you. Family members began to stand, some quietly aligning themselves beside me, others hesitant but undeniably moved. Voices began to rise, affirming support for what I had revealed, and I could feel it, the cascading shift as more found courage to voice their frustrations against a family structure that had long upheld status over substance. Each word, each sentiment shared felt like a new thread weaving our narratives together. The family was fractured, splintering into memories of what once was and what could be. But in that moment of reckoning, surrounded by faces that were both familiar and foreign, I felt the extraordinary comfort of clarity and agency. I had finally put an end to their deception, shrouded the lingering bitterness with a light of hope, and emerged victorious. They could not keep pulling the strings without consequence anymore, and I had taken my power back.